All right, we're talking movies. I'm Cakes. I have with me here today
Dave and Luke.
Okay, guys, let's get into it. Last movie you saw. Luke, what did you see?
The last one I saw in the theater was Lawless, directed by John Philcott. I think I got his name right. It's also written by Nick Cave. They worked on The Proposition together, and this is also the same gentleman that directed The Road. It's about a band of brothers that live in West Virginia or so, and during the bootlegging era. It's really, I felt a little lackluster. I was expecting more darkness from Nick Cave, but and the violence is pretty brutal, but I felt like it was everything I've kind of seen before. But it's still worth watching. Really good, pretty good performances. Guy Pearce is pretty incredible to see in it. His look alone is
Love him.
recognition.
Love that guy. And that was Nick Cave, not Nick Cage, Dave. Just making sure you know. Okay.
And yeah, it was good. I mean, really good performances. Production itself is really awesome, but yeah, like I said, just I felt it was kind of everything I've seen before. It wasn't quite Newton Boys, but
I enjoyed the Newton Boys. That was a good movie.
but it had its moments. And then let's see, I finished Miranda July's The Future, which was kind of a good movie to watch at this time in my life. But it's also kind of went in this different area that I wasn't expecting. But I mean, I enjoyed that it was very original. I just like Miranda's view of the world. She just kind of has this other way of thinking about things, and almost surrealist magic but mundane, like everyday things. Is very very one of a kind, and I really appreciate that. Those are the two probably most noteworthy things I've seen in the last probably week or two that I can think of off the top of my head.
Dave, last movie you saw?
Well, I can't believe I hadn't seen it before, but last movie that I watched was Mom and Dad Save the World. Kind of a kids movie, except it's starring the parents. It's got Principal Rooney from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and he has to basically run around the galaxy because John Lovitz is a space villain and he's swooning his wife. And it was a really funny movie. I love John Lovitz. He's kind of a underrated comedic talent, and it was kind of a movie that was for kids, which I was actually talking to one of my friends about the movie, and they were saying that John Lovitz actually had no idea like what the movie was going to be rated after they had filmed it, and he heard that it was like a PG movie, like for like the whole family, and so apparently they cut out a lot of stuff, a lot of performance that John Lovitz did in that, which I can only imagine. But I really enjoyed the film. Kind of a sucker for. Still going? Cool. Just for like sci-fi sets and costumes. And I guess you don't see as much of that in films anymore. So it was actually pretty well designed too. Aside from the little fish face and bulldog face costumes, those are kind of cheesy, but
yeah, I enjoyed that movie too. That was one of my favorites as a kid, and yeah, John Lovitz was pretty great in it. Yeah, it's just King Todd or whatever his name was. I don't know. I just loved his run. His arms just swing side to side, and I don't know. John Lovitz was pretty great. It's just that, like, jealous kind of.
yeah.
And then, but his performance to me in Happiness, just the like first 10 minutes that he's in it, it's pretty heartbreaking. But I mean, and all the other stuff he's in too is just hilarious. His SNL work and The Critic, and
Yeah.
Yes, definitely agree with the underrated John Lovitz. Excuse me. The Critic is by far one of my one of my favorite shows. It's a little dated nowadays because of its immediate, theatrical satire. But it's still pretty good. They make fun of some classics too, like Spartacus and the first Jurassic Park. But yeah, definitely a pretty underrated show. John Lovitz, great comedic actor. I think sometimes we don't give actors enough credit for expressive faces, and he's certainly somebody that makes me laugh just about anything he does, whether he's crying or laughing or even smiling. Last movie I saw was Safe House with Ryan Reynolds and Denzel Washington. Denzel's a sexy man. What can I say? His movies, just about everything he's been in the last 10 years, he's just Mr. Intense. But you kind of expect that, and he does it differently a little bit every time. So it's always interesting. He makes a pretty good movie, I think. The movie little on the actiony side, little bit too much sometimes, but I thought it was a good movie. It was kind of big bad guys, CIA type of thing, and whatnot, but I don't know. It was a pretty good movie. My wife didn't enjoy it as much as I did, but I thought it was pretty decent. Moving on, I thought we'd talk a little bit about documentaries today. Documentaries, as Luke mentioned earlier here before we started, have really they've really had a golden age of documentaries probably in the last 10 years. There's a lot more kind of upstart directors doing that to get notoriety and whatnot. So why don't we just talk about some of our favorite documentaries that we've seen? There's been a lot being made. Especially with Michael Moore. Getting a lot of notoriety with some of the stuff that he's done. I think it's certainly created kind of a big buzz. I'm not giving him sole credit, but he's kind of a big documentary filmmaker out there that people know about. So any huge documentaries that pop in your mind? Any favorite documentaries, Dave?
Last one that I saw was the Woody Allen documentary. It just came out on Netflix actually, and it's in 2 parts. I only saw the first part so far, but it's pretty impressive to see Woody Allen's just like different perspective on how he tells stories and how he goes about telling them and infusing them with his comedy. They also talked about the cinematographer that was working with him for these movies. I can't remember his name right now.
But he worked a lot of great cinematographers. But I know you're talking about that.
He had worked is like the guy that worked on like Apocalypse Now and like all like these like
Gordon Willis, I think is his name.
Yes.
Yeah, and they did Manhattan together, I think, which is a gorgeous movie with Gershwin's score. Yeah, beautiful movie.
Yeah, and so I mean they paired him up with Woody Allen, and it just seemed like nobody thought it was gonna work, but apparently like they got along really well together. So it's nice to get some insight into some of that since I read some of his books and seen some of his movies too. So
yeah, I liked it too. I thought it showed like a nice portrait of like how unbecoming he really is. Just not kind of is. Well, if it works, the movie works. If it doesn't, we'll just move on. And actors just how he clamors for actors, and even if he drops it from a movie because it doesn't work, like there's really no hard feelings. And and he has his own faults too in the movie, which he'll talks about. Yeah, it's actually a really. I don't think there's a lot of good portraits. I call them portraits of artists, and I think that's actually probably one of the most fair and balanced ones, most insightful. I definitely agree with that.
And I have not seen a Woody Allen, but when a documentary is made about a specific person, especially a famous person, it certainly humanizes them. Not that Woody Allen is some an unapproachable media mogul by any means, but it sheds a little bit more light on who he is and where he's coming from, and a lot of times and he's kind of certainly one of those guys that, you know, I think actors feel like they've made it if they're in one of his movies, even if it's just a bit part. You know, people want to work for him. He's established himself at that point. You know, so. It's interesting to see, you know, a story about somebody who is at that point in their career. You know what I mean? I guess there's another documentary. The most recent documentary that I saw was one called "Exit Through the Gift Shop." I didn't really get into it. I've heard a lot of people have really liked it. I thought it was a little slow. It's a little. I guess, you know, it's about an artist, but it's a little artsy fartsy too, and I don't necessarily, not that I don't necessarily appreciate that, but I don't know, it was not anything that I could get into necessarily. So.
Yeah, I think the last ones I saw that Woody, and then I saw that George Harrison one by Marcia Scorsese, which I talked about briefly before, and that was a nice portrait again, just all these different perspectives, and it's just his chronicling his career from beginning to the end, and his spirituality actually, which I thought was really fascinating. But yeah, I think this past year, 10 or so years, have been really great. Like some notable ones is like Why We Fight, which talks about the military-industrial complex in a very clean, precise manner. Really opens your eyes a lot. I saw Seafood Inc., but I hear that one's really great. Bigger, Stronger, Faster, which is about being a man in America, testosterone and steroids and stuff. Which it's really engaging. If I, like you said, Startup. It's this guy's first movie, non-professional. But yeah, I mean, there's just tons of them out there. Tracks to the Dark Side, which was a great one. Oh, I'm just drawing a blank right now, but yeah, there's just so many great ones. And then on a side note, and I'll stop my rambling here. This year's Oscars Special Achievement Award, Lifetime Achievement Award, is going to, I believe his name is D.A. Penbeck or something like that, and he did like Montgomery Pop and tons of other work. Really established the new documentary for America, and he's doing a lot of great work. A lot of his films are in the Criterion Collection, I know. So it's nice to see a little guy getting some love, you know, because he never made the big money like Michael Moore or anything. But
documentaries I think are sometimes made to give us a little bit more of an insight about certain topics, you know, like Murder Ball, or you know, that involves, is it people in wheelchairs playing dodgeball?
Yeah.
I haven't actually seen it. I've just heard a lot about it. One of the most interesting ones and kind of painful ones that I watched was like it's escaping me. It's about the old couple getting cochlear implants. The old couple, there's an old couple that's deaf and they get these implants.
Oh, I haven't heard.
So they
I haven't seen them, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I can't remember the name of it now. Sorry, but anyway, it involves an old couple that's basically been deaf most of their adult lives, but I think most of their lives, and they are given hearing aids. You know, they're in their 60s or 70 years old, and it's basically them struggling with them trying to teach themselves how to hear. You know, it's almost heartbreaking to watch, because, you know, they would rather not hear anything rather than try to figure out how to hear at this point in time in their lives. So it's certainly, documentaries can certainly portray, you know, something so real that sometimes it's almost painful.
What I like about documentaries is you get an insight to someone's little life story that wouldn't make a good feature, but you just get more perspective of the world, and I think honestly, the more you watch, I think your worldview grows a little bit bigger. You know, it's like reading a really good book. I'm not saying there's a lot of bad documentaries out there too, because of the boom, but I love them just to get a different perspective of something.
Yeah, I wanted to say a little bit about that too. Just about, I mean, you're right, it is kind of growing into an age of documenting where we're at, because a lot of things have, you know, exploded in the past 50 years, and a lot of people are writing nonfiction now too. But you got to be careful because the idea of it is to open your mind and give yourself a new perspective.